It's just stepping into myself with confidence and moving forward and finding out that the only person closing doors for me was like me. Literally, I saw a movie quote or heard a movie quote that just kind of galvanized me into more action. Like, instead of saying, why me, say, why not me?
Between the Grooves is hosted by James Curtis, music director and morning man in the Greater Toronto Area on Joy Radio, and Aisha Woods, Grammy-nominated singer, songwriter, and musician. Together, they talk with artists and industry insiders to discover our connection between music and faith. You can connect with us on Facebook or Twitter at Between Grooves. Now, here's James and Aisha.
Here we are back on Between the Grooves. James Curtis along with Aisha Woods. How you doing, Aisha?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. Doing very good. Can't wait for summer.
Can't wait for summer.
Yeah, I'm just being optimistic. That's my favorite season.
I know you're freezing your butt off up there. Right
always. We've had some pretty cold temperatures over the last few weeks. And from my standpoint, I don't mind the cold as much as the snow. With the snow, I mean, it's great to look at and everything else, but the reality is you have to drive through it. You have to shovel it if it's on your driveway or your walkway. And that's just the manual labor, the work and stuff. The worst thing for me is because I'm up so early in the morning, if it does snow overnight, I have to get up either extra early or leave extra early to get through. Well, not just the shoveling, but to drive through it, because a lot of times the plows or the salters haven't been out yet. So I'm driving really slow, trying to get through it and make sure I don't go off the road or hit a guardrail or whatever else. So
I tell you what, I'd be in trouble because I don't know the first thing about driving in snow. I know there's definitely an art to it. Yeah.
Yeah. You kind of get used to it. I've been in some snowy conditions where I didn't respond correctly in my driving, and I paid the price for it. So I'll just leave it at that. Sorry, Mom. Sorry about your car.
We're talking about there being an art to it. This conversation we're having today, this young lady, she has kind of mastered the art of songwriting.
She's a friend of yours.
Yes, she is. We go way back. We got married around the same time. We had our first kid, and I love her heart. Can't wait to get into this conversation and find out what she's got to say about songwriting and ministry and retreats and
she's also a worship leader and she does a lot of co-writes, and she teaches people how to co-write. I think that's the gist of what we want to chat about today is how does this all work with co-writing and what's involved, and she does these retreats specifically for that, doesn't she?
Yes, she does, and I've been to a retreat that she's had before, and amazing. So yeah, let's get into it.
Meg Ammons on Between the Grooves. Hello.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I climbed a mountain. I'm not the techiest person you ever met, y'all.
Oh, it's all good, Meg.
It's not sending it to my headphones, but it should be coming through this microphone.
We can hear you, but you can't hear us, is what you're saying?
Oh, I hear y'all clear as day. I don't hear me, which I guess doesn't matter. It's like when you're singing and you want to hear your own voice in your mix, I'm not hearing it.
Do you know, whenever I do sound, I haven't done it in a while, but if a singer is singing, say, to a track, or even with a band for that matter, and they start singing off key, usually it means they can't hear themselves, or vice versa. But usually it's because they can't even hear themselves, so they don't know they're singing off key.
Right.
Yeah.
And you could have done sound check and everything was fine, but of course the acoustics and the dynamics change in a room once it's full of people, and so a good sound engineer really has to move on a dime when they hear something like that, because they're ultimately responsible to make sure that that singer sounds good.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully we're all growing, and it's a great skill to be aware. Like, if you know whether you're flat or sharp, that's a good thing. And unfortunately, some people don't know when they are.
Right.
And so you can't, then you just have to have outside help. But, anyway.
They need outside help.
They need that little. We have a pitch corrector, capability in our system, but what's really tricky, it can help you. But if you're like I guess what you would call flow a lot in our worship times, and it's so nice to have the flexibility to change keys and just wherever you would want to go. But then if the sound guy has the pitch correcting set, okay, we're in A flat right now. But then if he doesn't change it and you change keys, then it is the weirdest, trippiest thing. Mental game, yes. So if it's autocorrecting to the wrong key, no matter how well you are, how good a singer you are, it's just a big mess. It's so funny because it really, talk about messing with your confidence. I'm like, do I sound that bad today? No, it's just that I'm singing an F and it's set to G,
I kind of think that a pitch corrector is kind of cheating a bit. I mean, either you got it or you don't, as far as singing capability is concerned. And maybe somebody should be a greeter instead, Well, that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah, that's kind of true. But when you're streaming and you're singing 4 services and, and when you're working with volunteers, if you're paying your teams and things, then you have the whole, you know what I mean? Like you can say, hey, we need this bar to be hit every time. Right.
But if you're working with teams and you're trying to be pastoral and not just commercial, then all of a sudden, you have sometimes a mixed bag of
talent,
abilities. Yeah.
Yes,
so
indeed. Pitch
correcting is maybe the kindest thing you can do sometimes. I don't know.
I was visiting another church on the weekend, and I've listened to their service online, and they actually. I shouldn't be saying this because if the person ever hears that I said this, I won't say any names or anything like that. But actually, I found their online service sounds better than live.
Oh, really?
So now maybe it was just an odd week where they had a different group up there, like different worship leaders, but just the mix didn't sound as full. I could hear the the song leader or the worship leader was relatively muffled almost, and I could hear the drums, but I couldn't hear all the other instruments going, and the online mix sounded a lot better. So I'm not sure if they've adapted because of the whole online service thing with people doing that over COVID and stuff, and they've kind of overkilled on the online streaming service and made that sound good and not concentrated on the in-house stuff anymore. I don't know.
Good gracious!
It's like 2 mixes and 2.
Well, it is 2 mixes because you could put reverb and echo on a voice for live. And not listen to the online stream, and then you listen to the online stream. It's like, whoa, that's way overkill because it's a totally different mix.
Yeah.
That happened to everyone during COVID when all of a sudden everyone's streaming.
Yeah. I saw online a video of, I guess it was a video promoting these songwriting retreats. And it was a bunch of women talking about how great you are. Gifted writer, beautiful woman, singer, songwriter, worship leader, blah, 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 and everything else.
Yes.
And so I thought, well, you must have a pretty good reputation, number one. And number 2, people must like your songwriting.
Well, that is the hope, I'm just myself and trying to live forward and honest and I would like to grow in favor with God and man, like they said of Jesus.
Isn't there a verse about that?
Yeah, I feel like there might be.
Either that or it's a song, right?
Yeah. Just, some people have believed in me. I just owe so much to so many people who would give me a chance. This is a fairly new venture as far as the retreats, but it really combines parts of my life into one place. And it just kind of fell into my lap to do one. It was confirmed. I just realized that, when you come alive about something in your heart is like burning, like, man, I almost can't believe I didn't come to this sooner. Because I've always loved women's small groups. I was single all through my 20s. And just because of that season, I found so much community with women and led lots of Bible studies. I've been on staff at churches and I've been a songwriter all my life. Not always as brave about it and willing to wear the label. I was kind of like, oh, I write songs, but I'm not like a quote songwriter. And so it's just stepping into myself with confidence and moving forward and finding out that the only person closing doors for me was like me. Do you know?
Yeah.
Just learning to ask, literally, I saw a movie quote or heard a movie quote that just kind of galvanized me into more action. Like, instead of saying, why me, say, why not me? And that's just been the kind of switch of thinking that my brain, I hesitate more than I move forward often. That's my nature, for whatever reasons. But just, maybe it's just growing up, that we find like, I'm not going to worry about what other people think so much. Like, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors to these ideas we have about what is the music industry, what is like, does someone have to give you some official kind of thing before you're allowed to do things in this world? Actually, no. So why can't I gather some women? Now growing it requires connecting. And yes, the people who came first to my retreats are people who knew me already. And but then from there it's growing, and hopefully like those kind of testimonials is, because I don't have a big name to drop. I mean, people don't know my name unless they already happen to know me and things like that. But it's just a really joyful way to move forward, to think I'm going to do the thing that God put in my heart to do. And I'm really going to actually really trust that God will open doors that he wants opened,
So Songwriting Retreat, what does that entail? Like, is that like a weekend away with just songwriters? Are the songwriters all women, or is it a mixed crowd? Like, do you start with a theme? Like, how does that all work?
Well, I've been able to put together like my dream best case scenario. I've been to a lot of retreats myself and conferences. I find that when I talk to people, a lot of people are in similar shoes to like, if you're a songwriter and you're involved in church, of course you're thrown into the worship department because that's the other musical thing. But sometimes songwriters may find that they're the only songwriter in their local church, or there's not a lot of traction, or they don't have an in to just sing their own songs. And so there's a lot of isolated maybe songwriters that can connect online, but there's something so powerful about getting together in person. So my retreats are for women, Christian female songwriters. Currently, I'm not set up to do like minors. That's a whole nother thing of, liabilities. And I'm just not set up for that right now. And I also feel like my retreats may not be the best place to come and learn how to write songs if you've never written before. So kind of identifying where I can be most effective. It's a fairly fast-paced, crowded, fun schedule, but if you've never written songs before, that can feel a little overwhelming to feel like you're playing catch-up the whole time. So I think I can minister and just bless and encourage best women who just need the connection and the encouragement and some healthy pushback, some challenging, and just confirming the call in their life. Because sometimes people are being faithful, but there's maybe no one saying, keep going, you can do this. Yeah. And I love to be that. So it's, yes, my retreats are only for women. And I've had all different states, different levels. Some are just, some are the worship leader at their church. Some are recording artists outside of their own church. Some of them are only songwriters and don't actually carry the songs they write. So it's kind of a variety within the songwriting world of who has come. But it's a beautiful mixture. I'm blown away just to think about what God is doing as far as you get different ages represented, different experience levels represented. We even have diversity and ethnicity represented. And you can see it in the songs. You can see it in the songs that come out. We have traditional sounding songs. We have modern sounding songs. We have CCM. We have Christian pop. We have singer-songwriter. We have super congregational. It's just this freedom. So to your question, we don't really put a theme. I have been to writing retreats where they had a theme. But so far, I just feel like gather the women and let them decide in their co-writing groups what's on their hearts to say. And I love offering that freedom that's kind of our current structure. Unless God says change it, that's kind of how we're rolling. And we're getting good feedback that seems to be really adding value to people and meeting where they are, what they need.
So if somebody wants to go on one of these songwriting retreats, is there a screening process or a weeding out process or a whittling down process of some of the applicants? Because you said you want them to have some kind of experience and some kind of whether they've written before or they're musically inclined. I mean, you could get anybody and their mother wanting to come to these things, and then
so true.
Sure.
I've had to ask myself, prayerfully, how to steward that. So I do have a 2-step process, and most retreats that I'm aware of do as well. If you're sleeping in a house together, it can't just be come because you can pay. There has to be some oversight. And so it's a really simple process. It's free to apply. I just ask simple questions like, how many songs have you written this year? How many songs have you co-written this year? What would you class yourself as, a beginner, intermediate, semi-pro? Kind of get a gauge, and I ask them to submit a song that they've been part of.
Oh, that's good. That's probably because anybody can say, I've written 10 songs.
Well,
but,
yes. And I have had people...
Twinkle, twinkle.
That's right. And I can sing.
And you don't have to be a singer to come, because one beautiful thing about songwriting is you might have a huge contribution in the room, but not be a good singer yourself. So I love that can be inclusive in that way. I have told people no before, only simply because when they say they've never written a song yet, I feel like, okay, this is not the first step to take. So that's a hard email to write. I don't look forward to that, but I try to include resources to say, hey, why don't you consider starting here? This community and this class that starts with a foundation. And honestly, I mean, I want to be pastoral and inclusive and love everybody, but at the same time, there's a little bit of the you need to hear some truth sometimes. And if you're in a co-write with 3 more experienced writers and you have never finished a song yourself, it's just going to feel like people slapping you in the face when they don't think your idea fits the theme. I mean, and co-writing is a skill on top of songwriting almost itself. So I want to say that in the most loving way, but if you've never done a marathon before, maybe you start with a few laps around the track, on your own.
There you go.
And I would like to see someone take ownership and start the journey before they're thrown into 4 co-writes in 2 days is kind of intense if you've never written a song before. So that's, and I get some judgment call power there, if I know someone that's an incredible musician and worship leader who writes songs but hasn't co-written much, well, then their application can tell me enough that I can say, this is good, And at the end of the day, I get to make those calls, but I haven't had to make it a lot because I think people in general kind of know if they're ready for it or not, So it's not like I have to be this harsh master in any way. It's, I've been able to just gently guide a few people to maybe a better first step. And otherwise, God has brought beautiful groups of women every time. And we just all connect so well. We leave friends for life. There's been zero problem. I know, that's just a gift of God.
So
he's just brought beautiful people.
Do you ever have situations where you identify a songwriter where maybe they're very gifted in songwriting, but maybe how do I say this politely? Maybe they need to let go and let someone else sing the song. Yes. I've experienced that in my life. At our retreats, people are allowed to do what they want with songs. And I've been to retreats that treat this a few different ways. But in my retreats, I just stipulate from the beginning, we don't own these songs. We're not taking your publishing. So it's up to the writers to figure out what they want to do with the songs. So I don't have to step in and say, hey, they work it out themselves, if that makes sense. So they can do nothing with it. They can pitch it. They can do what they want. I don't have to step in on the admin side of songwriting at all for these songs unless I'm a part of one of them and
I wish to do something. I'll tell you honestly, this is just also evidence of what God is doing and how he like confirms your obedience with favor. You know, on the songwriting journey, you know, as we start and we continue, if we're faithful, there's just no way we don't end up further down the road. It does look different for different people, but
Right.
I'm in the position where we actually had some, Aisha will know, I had a little text conversation with her yesterday. And this is where I'm learning. I mean, I'm not an expert or claiming to be. I'm just joyfully running forward. And I've never been in a position where I had two people want to do something with one song before. It's kind of like a songwriter's dream, honestly, because a lot of people are writing songs and just, you know, maybe they're a few steps behind where they wish that one person would want to do something with one of their songs.
Sure, I
And
suppose.
I've been there.
I mean, I guess my perspective on that is, you know, I come from a radio background, so I'm the music director of a Christian radio station in Toronto, and I get songs submitted to me all the time, and you know there's always a cover note that says something to the effect of, I think, well, first of all, they'll say something like, I think this song will sound great on your radio station, and then I listen to it and I think, well, maybe you should listen to my radio station and see if it would sound great, because maybe it won't. How's that for saying it politely? But very often I'll get a song where the song itself is great, and you know, you know, they'll say something like, you know, this is a great message for the church, or it's a great message that needs to get out there. And I'm thinking, yeah, it is a great message that needs to get out there. Maybe you should have let somebody else sing the song that could do a better job for you, because you might be gifted as a songwriter,
it's kinda tough.
but you need to maybe let somebody else take it and run with it, because they'll be able to do far more than what you could do.
Absolutely.
Well,
I agree there.
Here's my chance to champion songwriters' response to that. Most serious songwriters would be happy to let a bigger name or a better voice carry their songs. What we often find is if you're an indie, then there is no one knocking on your door saying, let me hear your songs. And so for some songwriters, maybe just at the stage they are, the best next step they can do is put their song out themselves, because otherwise it's sitting in a pile until you have certain connections, or maybe your reputation as a songwriter keeps growing. For some people, that's a really brave step that they could do, because some of those steps you can't just elect for yourself. Because everyone would say, sure, I want Mandisa, I want Toby Mac, I want, you know, Hope Darst, I want them to record my song. But there can be a really hard a pay-to-play, literally pay-to-play, pay-to-pitch thing that's maybe cost prohibitive to people. So in the indie songwriter world, which is where I'm firmly planted, you know, for now anyways, that's something a songwriter can do for themselves, get a nice demo made with a better voice, or be brave enough to put it out there, if that makes sense. So I mean, I'm sure songs come across your plate where you are seeing it from your perspective. And I'm just saying from the other perspective, that's their best bet, is to get it out right now until they build a name for themselves. You know, because,
But I guess the difficult thing from my perspective is they're competing like everyone else. They're competing for a small block of time on the radio station. And so the quality level, the musicianship, the vocal quality, all of that stuff comes into play. So an indie artist is competing with, they are literally competing with the Toby Macs, the Ben Fullers, all these big names. And so while maybe they can't get their song in front of, or get radio airplay, maybe they take that effort and the work they put into that song, as long as they don't, I guess, have the expectations that it's going to become a radio hit, maybe they need to be concentrating their efforts on recording a good demo and getting it out to the labels and seeing if they're interested in taking it further. Yeah, that's definitely a step they can take. There's a moment of like daring to dream, and then there's the reality check. Say Aisha. I know you've seen some things on your journey. I'm at the place where I just love to encourage people to take the next step and be ready to champion yourself until someone else wants to.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
because if you're waiting for someone to champion
absolutely.
you may never. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't want to downplay or push anybody down as far as their efforts and the work that they've done and everything else. I guess I'm just trying to look at it from the perspective, if your gifting is songwriting, maybe your gift is not singing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So in other words,
Right.
You have to recognize if you can sing or not. If you can't sing, then why are you trying to record this professional sounding song and then being let down when it's not played on the radio
Right.
because you think that the song needs to get out there? Well, maybe you're pushing the song in the wrong direction, right? Instead of pushing it to radio, push it to somebody that can do something more with it.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And that's the part everyone does need to accept. And I mean, you couldn't be more right. That's the part you have to, if you're going to jump and run in this vein, that has to come with it. And, Ross King is an awesome songwriter. Shout out Ross King.
We've had him on the show before, yeah.
Okay. Well, he's just incredible. And he calls it the suck meter. Like, you need to be able to evaluate yourself accurately.
Sure.
And if you can,
Sure.
then you're not surprised when your song gets rejected or,
Right.
if you can say, well, yeah, I stand by my song, but someone else would sing it better, then it's good, just self-awareness. And hopefully as writers, want to be artists or wherever we are, we're willing to grow in self-awareness, because that improves our skill and our way that we relate with people, versus if it's a huge blind spot for you and you're just astounded that if no one ever wants to work with you, is it because you just haven't gotten your chance yet? Or is it because there's maybe a blind spot around something?
A maturity level for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's a hairy pile of discussion, It's how do you, and the further up you wish to climb, you're going to have thicker skin that can handle that. If someone's written their first song, maybe you don't crush them if it's not good. You support what you can support, and you support their effort, but it's just like children, the expectation gets higher. You want privileges, but you have to have that self-awareness and responsibility. So on our songwriting journey, I sure am going to champion someone on the first song they've ever written. But as they keep writing, and if they keep wanting to grow, then your criticism of their writing is probably going to have to grow. You're going to have, so that's where the dream wears off and the hard work kicks in, maybe,
There you go. Yeah. I love what you talked about, what you said about positive pushback. Can you talk a little bit more about that and its importance in songwriting?
Yeah, well, in my life, I don't think I ever love critical pushback, but every time it makes me a better writer. I don't, so it's like, it doesn't really feel good, because of course we want our ego stroked and we want someone to say, well, that is the best thing I've ever heard. But I grow a lot when it's a compliment to your song. First, I hope songwriters will hear this. It's a compliment to your song if someone sees enough in your song that they're willing to pick it apart and make it better, to kick it around, some ideas of things. If someone just gives you a really token, hey, great.
Yeah.
One, it's not as helpful, but consider it a compliment if someone gives you some specific critical feedback.
But if somebody says that's a great start, and you just put a ton of work into this thing, that's kind of a letdown too, right?
I've been there. Yeah.
That's a great start. You spent the last 10 hours perfecting this thing. It's like, well, it's a great start. It's like, great start. What are you talking about?
I know. Yeah.
You know what? That's funny, because it makes me think of my dad. I baked a cake. I was like 12. It was my first cake, right? So I hooked it up and let him have a piece, and he's like, "Oh, the icing is really good."
Yeah.
He tried to let me down easy. I think I probably put too much baking soda in it.
Oh,
I didn't
that
follow
taste,
the recipe correctly.
Yeah.
But I will never forget that. And my cakes are
better now.
Well, your husband hasn't complained, so that's a good thing. Well, he better not complain, actually.
Just eat it with a smile.
He's the one
Eat it
that
with a
bakes,
smile.
actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
That's so funny.
So
I think songwriting is the same.
Can you take us through, I guess, on these retreats now? Where does it start? I mean, do you write? Is it typically writing a song from scratch, or taking existing ideas from the participants? And then in all of that, you said that usually a group of 4. Is it you that takes the lead, or is that somebody else that takes the lead? Because everybody wants to be the boss sometimes and kind of lead.
That's true.
Lead as far as this is what I think we need to be doing as far as the song that we're creating, but maybe somebody's thinking, wait a minute, that's way off base. I think we should be doing this. So how do you deal with situations like that?
Well, okay, so when everyone gets to the retreat, our typical schedule is connect on the first night. I run them Tuesday through Friday. And the reason is because a lot of people that would be most interested, and you could say most of my target, a lot of them are serving in churches on the weekend. And so the weekend is a worse time for them. Now, it's never perfect because there's some people that would come, but they have 9-to-5 jobs Monday through Friday. So, it's unless I do a variety of times, there's always some group of people that it's harder for. But Tuesday through Friday, we gather on Tuesday afternoon, check in, chill, and just to get to know each other. One of my very favorite parts of the retreat, I've heard from a lot of other songwriters, you go to events and you listen and you're super filled up by what you hear from people further down the road than you. But sometimes people can come away saying, well, I didn't get to personally connect, and maybe we would wish to be more seen. And so that's something really special, honestly, that a smaller retreat can offer. And I say I want them to grow, but at the same time, there's something special about them not getting too big, because the first night of the retreat, we go around and everyone shares their story. And that's the most empowering, community creating thing I think that we could do. We worship together, we pray together, but then, in this circle, throughout the different retreats, I'm just seeing in my mind snapshot moments from the times where people are crying, they're laughing, they're sharing their biggest struggles in their journey of songwriting, or how something hard in their life is affecting their songwriting right now, or just, you could call them pain points, victories, just anything. And so starting off a retreat that way, it was almost accidental, but now it's become so important. I make sure I put it in, because then when you go to write the next day and the following day, instead of maybe strangers you started out as on that first night, you're already like connected, so that's such a powerful way to help us write together. I feel like we're pulling together. And then when we split up into the groups, it's either 3 or 4 people. 3 is my favorite, but depending on how many people you have in your retreat, you split up to 3 or 4. I always make sure that there's at least one strong instrumentalist in every group. It's kind of like a puzzle. If you've ever been in charge of breaking up a group of people into co-writes, it is like putting together a puzzle, because I try to make sure I always have some artists coming and people that don't carry songs themselves. So every write needs to have someone who could potentially carry the song if they like it. Every write needs to have a strong musician. Now, usually we end up having several artists and several musicians in any one group, that could potentially, that's automatically 2 opportunities for a song to fly. Because especially as indie artists, once you have good songs, it can feel like such a hard thing. Like, well, where can it live? And so if you put artists in rooms, then that's a possible. It's no guarantee they'll like it or want to record it, but it's at least a potential path forward for any song that's written. And in every co-write, they figure it out themselves. We have some best practices we mentioned. Be okay if someone else is just cranking out some awesome ideas. Let them have that moment in the write. Also, don't be afraid to push back. If you're going to be pushing back, though, make sure you can be specific and like redemptive, not just I'm over here being critical about everything and everyone because it's not my idea.
Right.
That's that makes you the person people don't want to write again with in the future.
So watch yourself. Watch yourself.
I mean, yeah, if you're always that. But at the same time, I don't know. I do encourage pushback. Fight for the best song. Because, I've been at writes where we've been stuck. If anyone's written much, there are just times where you're stuck. No one likes any ideas. We're just super stuck. But almost every time I find that a room is stuck, what really has happened is that a line or two back, someone really just didn't really like that idea, but didn't say anything. And so now, like, they're seeing the block. But one time we were stuck for like half an hour. It was a large group, which makes it harder. And once we backed up a line or two and someone said, I really don't love that line. It's like the dam broke. So I think honesty in the room gives you quicker progress overall. It's not a guarantee, but I encourage pushback and speak up in a specific, helpful way. I'm not saying just bash everything because that's, bad. But so that's what the writes do. I mean, just they talk. Now, I'm always encouraging people to bring song starts, not a whole song, because then it's too much your baby already, and you don't like it when people start rearranging and cutting. But I think everyone who's serious about songwriting needs to keep a list. This is a best practice just in your daily life. Keep a list of song ideas, whether it's one word or a Bible verse or a quote you read, an idea that you've been mulling over. But keep a list of those things so that you're always prepared to offer something in a room.
Sure.
You should really never bring nothing to a co-write. Now, also be willing to be okay with the room not jumping on your idea. But if everyone has some ideas and then you talk amongst yourselves, like I honestly think you can feel it in the room when you're all like pulled to the same idea. And that's what you write that day. But anyone who's serious about growing a songwriter needs to bring something to the table. You get credit in the room and everything, but for that song, you might be fine, but you will not be a person that people want to write with again. That's just kind of one of those hard truths. If you sit there and don't say anything, don't offer anything,
right.
That write itself may turn out okay, but, bring something to the table.
Yeah, sure. I have a question, Meg. Do you, because I've seen this with other songwriters and songwriters that are extremely successful, do you have daily writing practices?
Ooh, you're calling me out, girl. Now, I don't personally force myself into a daily writing thing. Now, I end up writing almost every day, but it's more like it's just like this. Like when you have tabs open on your computer, there is like an internal always. To me, songwriting starts with hearing and listening, and so I think if you live with your hearing, and I'm not to make that sound over spiritual, but just in the same way that we don't just go to church to talk to God, we live every day with an awareness and carrying the presence of God wherever we go. That's the ideal Christian life. He's with you and you're communing with the Lord every day. Well, in the songwriting sense, to me, it's exactly the same. I hope that I always live with my hearing turned on. It's not just a gig I go do. It's not like I'm in this co-writing room right now. Let me turn on my hearing. It's an abundant way of living. And because you live that way, my list of song ideas is probably never going to run out, because it's, I'm not saying you have to be a prophet or anything. It's just the daily Christian life. God wants to speak to you every day. And I think the songwriters are this group of people that's honored in like trying to grab a little bit of heaven. And then you're in a room and you're organizing that to be a beautiful gift to the church, for ministry over them or for them to sing back to Jesus. It's like, it's this beautiful world you get to live in of hearing and receiving from the Lord and then shaping that to give away. Do you know? So that's how you live. Practically, yes, sometimes I jumpstart my writing by just verbal dumping it on a page or a Google Doc, or for me, I sit down at the piano and I mean, all the emotions of the day just seem to collide right there. If I'm having a hard day, I sit down at my piano and I might cry for a while first. It's like you just dump it all out to the Lord. And sometimes I feel like he sings over me. Sometimes he gives me, I might just sing a line of a hymn. It's not always even me creating my own thing. It's just living in the presence of God. And because he gave me the gift of songwriting, it just comes out in the form of songwriting. That's just a form of my worship back to the Lord. And it's such a beautiful journey. And it's kind of like I'm not trying to... girl, I could talk about that. It's just such a gift. It's amazing that God gave this to us and we get to use it for his kingdom. But Chrissy Nordhoff, hey, if a writer is listening and wants to learn, I'm so happy to just shout out to Chrissy and Eric Nordhoff and their writing worship community. That's the best place I can think of for a beginner writer to grow and learn. They have online courses, they have mentorships, they have a book and tools, everything. But if you're in the Word, if you're reading the Word, if maybe singing through the Word, that's a way that you can always stir the gift. Because if you're reading the Bible, you're going to get inspiration for your songs there. And in your prayer time, in your church's prayer times, what are people praying at your church prayer meetings? If there's a board where people are writing their prayer requests, there's songwriting inspiration right there. Write what the people in your church need. Write for the person on the front row, not just for radio consumption. It's like there's so many ways you realize you can use the gift to speak to what is around you.
By the way, we've had Chrissy on the podcast before as well. So
she's incredible.
Shout out. Yeah, she's very talented.
I'd love to shout them out.
Yeah. I guess as far as, related also to these retreats that you go away, and this is, really important. It's very dear to my heart. What about the food?
Well, we have some good food. Aisha, do we go hungry?
I concur.
Yeah. So
good times.
I love food.
Good company.
And I always get someone to help me. If you're ever hosting your own retreat, if you're leading a retreat, you just need to go ahead and plan on getting a helper person so you don't feel as overwhelmed. I always have someone help me, and we enjoy meeting to kind of plan out food. I love variety, and honestly, it's like putting together a puzzle as well, because so when someone, in my case, when they apply and they're accepted, then they get another link, which is the actual registration form. And that's where they note all their food, if they have food aversions or protocol that they're following,
preferences.
Or allergies.
Yeah.
Yes. No, we ask that and try to accommodate that for everybody, just with options. So everyone gets taken care of in that way. There's lots of people that just whatever, but then we have vegan or gluten-free or dairy-free and just different considerations. So that's another little puzzle that, it does take some time to put them together and to kind of nurture them along, to feed back with the people who have questions, to make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. But it's really a joy. Combining two things I really love together in this powerful one thing. And I'm excited for the future. I can announce, if you want, we've just set our next retreat dates. If people would like to know, we've set the next one for October 17th through 20th this year, 2023. And expecting a great time. They never fail to blow me away. And God just seems to bring exactly who he wants to come every time.
Yes,
and
sure
I expect no less this time. So if people are hearing this and they're interested, they can go out to mercytribemusic.com, which will have all the information for the retreat and all the steps, questions you might have, and then how to proceed if you're interested.
That's awesome. Now, tell me this. How can something like this happen for a church or in a church setting?
Well, that's another thing I am excited about rolling out in the future. So my retreats currently is when I would handle the process and people come to me. These retreats so far have all been hosted in the St. Petersburg, Florida area. But if a beautiful thing that God is doing in the church at large is that he's giving voice, I think, through songs that come out of a church. And there's something super special about seeing songs from that house being sung in that house. Some people just do that. Some people actually send it out because of streaming and everything to the whole world. But I'm always going to be a fan of raising up songwriters and stewarding songwriters in your own house. I have a personal experience of being in churches, several different churches that were wonderful churches, but they didn't exactly know what to do with songwriters. And so, there you are in the worship department, and partly fulfilled, of course, but they, it's kind of a newer thing. And honestly, we're all seeing so many churches start to raise up music out of their own house. One really effective way, if a church is interested in saying, man, we have a songwriter here and there and would like to see that more, a very effective thing to do is to kind of kickstart that, have a weekend. And in that case, the church gets to decide who they would want to come. It could be an open invitation. It could be, invite only. But you can bring in, you could bring me in that sense, and you could kind of host an in-house thing. And that would probably be a weekend if you're going to a church. But, you spend time talking about, I'm putting together my way of rolling that out called House Songs. And that's working with a church's team and teaching them how to steward the hearing, like I said, because it starts with hearing. Teaching them how to steward the hearing, teaching them how to steward the creative hearts of these people, and then just the best practices. I mean, if they've never co-written, let's talk about the practical stuff. Let's get experience writing songs that weekend and sharing them. And I think an event like that jumpstarts becomes it's kind of setting good precedent for this is how we're going to roll this out,
Yeah, I think a lot of, especially in a small local church, and people that are songwriters and they know they have that gifting probably initially don't have a clue where to start.
It's very true. And you can't expect the church to make it easy for you. The church doesn't owe you that.
Right.
So I would like to see a songwriter take some initiative personally. Here's what I say. You can go and you can find last night's football score. You can go and find out what the trends for 2024 are going to be for whatever.
Say it.
People can go find what they want to find. So I would say if there's a songwriter who's just sitting there waiting for someone to make it super easy for them, part of what I'm thinking is, what have you done for yourself? You know what I mean? So I want to steward, I especially want to steward the people who are already trying. That's a really special, so there are resources online. There are books about songwriting you can buy on Amazon. It'll show up at your door tomorrow. I would like to see some skin in the game versus opportunists. If you're only writing because someone made it super easy for you, I would just like to see someone add their own hard work to that.
I think that hard work is a big component, a big part of it. And that's in any, not just songwriters, but it's any career choice that you would want. If you're not willing to work at it, and whether it's getting the education behind it, any times I hear about somebody saying, I'd love to be on the radio. I could do that. Go to school and learn about it instead of just saying I could do that and show up and expect it just to be in your lap to be able to do that career if that's what you're interested in. Do the hard work, go to school, learn from people. Yep. Don't expect, to be this, I guess in the sake of a worship leader, like my daughter, years ago when she was a lot younger, she said when she grew up, she wanted to be a famous recording artist or a famous singer. Well, to get famous, you got to do a lot of work first, right? And that's what a lot of people don't want to do. They just want the glory. They want the end result and not do all the work to get there.
Right.
It's true. I had one of the most powerful text conversations I can remember. I just watched a friend do some recording. This is years ago now, and I was thinking about doing that. It kind of stirred up my own dream. And so I reached out to a producer friend and I was saying, hey, how would this look? Would you be interested in working with me? And their simple reply to me taught me so much. They said, well, I guess the first thing I would ask you is, how serious are you really? Are you going to dream all day? Or are you going to put some feet to your dreams?
Right.
That, and that's that point that you really have to reach. If you've only walked a few steps down the road because someone has coaxed you and paved the way, you're going to be a little shocked when you start getting no's. And music is full of plenty of no's. And you have to believe in yourself. You have to champion yourself before you can expect anyone else to champion you. I hope you are developing the practice of writing and hearing when you have zero audience. To me, that's the person I want to promote and say, geez, let me use my platform to help you step up another step.
Right.
When you're doing the reasonable and the effort you can do. So I would just encourage any writer, just whatever the next step is for you, take yourself seriously, invest in yourself, whether it's financial or just hours of effort, whatever. Just take your next steps. Don't just be sad that no one is opening a door for you, because that's my own experience talking. I've not been the fastest mover at times. And as I've grown up, I have to realize, well, there is actually no one telling me no. Just because there's not someone saying, let me do this for you, doesn't mean there's people telling me I can't do it. So just start doing it. Learn as you will never learn as much just as you start going, figuring it out, Start
doing it, put some sweat in the game, and maybe at times put some money in the game too. Right?
For sure. Yeah. For sure. And start out right. Like for any younger songwriter, I would simply say, what people told me I had to kind of go back and backtrack. Like, if you're serious about songwriting, when you finish a song, get a clean work tape of it, even if it's your iPhone, your voice memo or something, and start making a spreadsheet. Write the song title, write the date you wrote it, make your audio available, the co-writers, if there are any. Like, help yourself now towards the future that you want. If you stay organized from the beginning, it's going to be easier. So just start right. You don't have to hit 300 songs a year or what some professional people might be putting out, but just steward the gift. Steward the gift.
Yes.
And the other thing I'll say too is if you are writing a song and you do have the gift to sing that song and you want to throw something onto YouTube or Spotify or whatever else, TikTok, whatever it is, from my standpoint, get yourself a decent mic. Don't use some little cheap little mic that... If you're talented and you've got the ability and you are an awesome singer, get yourself the right equipment to do it properly. Yeah, sure. Even if it's considered a demo, get yourself something decent that's going to highlight your abilities.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all going to come back to priorities. If you're buying, I don't even know what, several expensive pairs of shoes every year, buy one less pair and put the money, it just is always going to expose your real priorities. Anyone can talk and all these dreams, but there's nothing stopping you right now except your fear that you can't, maybe. I mean, that's a valid thing, but to recognize that, okay, I'm the one stopping me. That might help you take your next step forward. But you can find online, you can call Sweetwater, whatever, and say, hey, what's the simplest gear I need with the equipment I already have to up my game? I actually last year...
This program has been brought to you by Sweetwater. Check out their website today. Oh, I'm sorry. Thought we were doing a plug there? No? Oh, okay, sorry.
No, they helped me so much. Last year, instead of putting out as much music as I wanted to, I look at it as I kind of taught myself to fish instead of buying a fish. So I bought some equipment, and it's only several $100s worth. And I, learned how to use a DAW. And I'm still learning. I have not arrived, but I decided to put effort so that I can now up my game for every song. If I have a song that someone's interested in, I can now make a simple tracked version of it, and so that was a next step for me to help me. And for not that much money, if it's a priority enough, you can make it happen. And it's just pretty cool. Yeah.
Thinking back on what you just said, it's not overcomplicated when it comes to the equipment standpoint. I've got a really, really nice recording studio in my home. Now it's meant for voiceover work, so all the equipment I have is geared towards that. And I was thinking over the weekend, man, I got some really nice stuff in there. But I didn't start that way. I started with a simple audio interface to be able to take a XLR mic and put it into a digital format to get into the computer. And that was it, just a mic and a DAW, and that was it, right? But I slowly expanded, and then I got this, and then I got that, and then I got this, and now this interface that I have, I don't even use that anymore. I've got something else, but I use that when I'm on the road now, so I'm still using it. I haven't thrown anything out. I've tried to be at least smart enough to make business decisions or purchasing decisions that on stuff that I will use down the road, maybe for other purposes. Sure. It was funny because I had a friend of mine saying, maybe you should sell some of your mics. And no, I'm not selling those mics because I've got a purpose for each one of them. I may not use it all the time, but I've got a purpose for it. That's the reason why I bought it when I bought it, and it may not be used for what I'm using it now because I've got another better mic for that or whatever the piece of equipment is. But there's a rhyme and a reason why I bought everything that I bought. But again, it's going back to that. Start small. Just buy something decent to start.
Yeah.
And then if it really takes off, or if you start making money a little bit, put it into the business, put it into buying some better equipment. Or you're, maybe it's something where you're working with a producer and they've got the better equipment, so you don't have to worry about that. Yeah. Right?
Just take your next step. There's simple, it can feel daunting to think of, gosh, I need to do all these things to get where I want. Sure, it feels overwhelming, but just take a next step and then regroup for a second, and then take your next step and then regroup. It doesn't always feel like magical leaps forward, but it's so much of these things, and whatever your gift happens to be. Here's me in songwriting, but so much of it is just going to come back to stewarding and faithfulness. Okay, you get a no. Well, I'm going to keep being faithful. Oh, I don't have the money to do X, Y, and Z, but I could do A, B, and C. Steward that. If you are faithful, there's just no way you don't end up further down the road. I am proving it with my life, I hope, and I will go to my last day on earth saying the same thing. Just keep being faithful. It sounds so simple. It's kind of hard sometimes, but the goal is actually that simple at the end of the day. Are you doing what God called you to do the best you can do it? Then you can sleep in peace. And if we're stressing about it, maybe we're not trusting God as much as we say we are. If I'm really trusting God, I'm writing the best songs I can. I'm committed to grow personally. There's just no way I'm not going to achieve the will of God in my life. I am sold on that thought. I just have to be obedient to the voice of the Lord, and He will order my steps for me. He will send me where He wants me to go. He will open the doors that He wants open for me. It might look different. I might be expecting something He doesn't have for me, so that might be my problem. But if I am faithful with my yes to Jesus, everything else will be icing on the cake, and I get to enjoy the journey every day.
And back to what you said, back to what you said, take that first step. I mean, sometimes it just means blocking off X amount of hours per week to say, okay, this is where I see God calling me. I'm going to take X amount of hours and work towards that objective. And like you said, maybe it's doing 1, 2, and 3 because you're not ready for 4, 5, and 6 yet. But at least you're doing something versus doing nothing and then wondering a year later, how come this hasn't gone anywhere?
Watch a video about how to help yourself on Spotify. Watch a video about, literary tools to use in your songwriting. Watch a video about, how to add reverb to your vocals in GarageBand. At some point, it becomes real practical things like that. Just watch one thing, learn one thing today, wherever you are in the journey. So that's just what I want to keep doing.
Self-development.
Yeah. Hey, let me say, I don't know if we're about done, but I in anticipation of this call today, I've been gorging on the podcast, and I feel really honored. I've heard some amazing voices that you all spoke with and just learned from their stories as they shared them with you. And I just feel super, super grateful that y'all would allow me to come on and rub cyberspace shoulders with people that are so much further down the road than me. I feel like a newbie compared to some of the industry people you've had on, but I'm very honored to be able to share with y'all today. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for joining us. And, we've got one more subscriber there, Aisha, so that's applause. Can we add some applause in there? Yeah. Just talking to Justine, our producer. We're gonna add some special effects in there and just some sound effects of applause and stuff. That's great. And everybody will think it's the real thing. It's our studio audience, ladies and gentlemen.
It's well, it's awesome. I mean, you have such a neat variety here. I wish you all well as you continue forward. And thanks for giving me a little boost. Maybe someone will find my retreats because of hearing this today.
Yeah.
Just be encouraged in their songwriting. If nothing else, I just love for people to be encouraged to keep on writing. Yeah, I just thank you again for the opportunity to share about what I'm doing. I appreciate that so much.
Thanks for coming on.
Love you, girl.
Bye. Love you too. I'll see you later.
Okay.
Well, thank you to Meg Ammons. What a great conversation. I really enjoyed that. You really need to check out her website, mercytribemusic.com. Find out all about her retreats and connect with her if you really want to get into that songwriting jive.
Now it's time for some artist advice. Let's see what Richland has to say.
I'd say number one, relax. And number two, be yourself. I think the further that we go in our musical artistic journey, it's so easy to try to look, sound, become something that we are not. And so I think there's something just really beautiful and valuable about someone that has just made a commitment to be their most authentic self. And so I'd say be yourself and just relax, enjoy the journey.
Just be you, it's natural. Can't get any more beautiful.
Well, that kind of sums it up too, doesn't it? Aisha Woods, live on Between the Grooves. What he says, we've heard from a lot of different artists in the past about talking about authenticity and just being yourself.
Yeah.
And that is so important. Nobody wants to hear, another artist. They want to hear you. And so you need to be you instead of just sounding like somebody else.
It's the resounding theme. Authenticity. It's definitely important and can't get enough of it.
Well, that is it. We are out of time. Really appreciate the time that we spent with Meg Ammons today from
yes, indeed.
Mercy Tribe Music. Just so much wisdom, so much insight, and so much experience. So hopefully that, if anything, gets songwriters inspired to move forward with their gift.
Yeah, sure enough. Meg is not only full of wisdom and a lot of knowledge. She is incredibly gifted. Like, she can sing her face off and she can play instruments. So just thought I'd add that.
Well, there you go.
Thanks for listening to Faith Strong Today's Between the Grooves podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider sharing it with your friends, rating our podcast, or giving us some love on your socials to your amazing friends and followers will only help us reach more people. We'd also love to hear from you and share your feedback in an upcoming episode. Send your video or written message to Aisha and James on Facebook and Twitter @Between Grooves, or email us anytime, hello@faithstrongtoday.com.